welcome to the Higher Education Access Corner. I'm one of your co-hosts for today's Hot Topic segments, Tiffanie DeVan.
And I'm Deanna Brown.
And joining us today, we have our fellow higher education access partner,
Julie Fontana.
And she is going to be our resident expert today for this particular topic. One of our hot topics that we've been talking about quite often is FAFSA Simplification. FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, and Julie is going to join us to get this discussion going. Thanks for joining us, Julie.
Sure. Yes, so FAFSA Simplification, in case our listeners don't know, is this huge process that the Department of Education has been going through to basically streamline the FAFSA, make it more simple for parents and students to complete. And it's a big revamp of the free application for federal student aid. Because they're doing this big revamp, one of the big changes this year is that the free application for federal student aid will actually be delayed this year. So typically the FAFSA is available every year after October 1st. This year, it is our understanding that it's going to be available sometime in December. So how do you guys think that's going to impact students and families with the FAFSA being delayed this year?
I think for families who are first-time FAFSA filers, it's not really going to be that big of an impact, just the fact that the date has been moved back a little bit. They're not familiar with the October 1st deadline or the date that it becomes available. However, I think for renewal applicants, they're going to be out there looking for that application. Parents are going to be hounding their student, did you complete the application? So I think it's really important there that there's communication that goes out to students and families about this big delay. And I know that FIA will be sending out email communications to students and families, as well as the Department of Education. Their plan is in September to begin to send out emails to renewal applicants and their parents to let them know of the delay. And then once a date is finally announced, to let them know when that date is. And then a follow-up email to remind them, go ahead and fill out your application.
Which is all good information to get out there. Another thing, I think, for those students and families who have gone to financial aid night presentations or have seen literature, they were expecting October. Because the previous years, we were saying October 1st, and I know in just doing some junior jump starts, we would say, hey, October 1st. So in some of their minds, it is going to be October 1st.
That's true. Yes.
And I've had a few families say, hey, when do I fill it out? It's October, right? And I'm like, nope, not this year. This year it's different. Yeah. And then the reminder is going to be, I think, it's going to be, okay, it's December this year, but then it's going to flip right back to October the following year. So just to remember the timelines. But again, messaging, I think, is really one of the things that's going to play a huge, it's going to have a huge impact on how successful they are with getting their applications completed on time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've been talking about FAFSA simplification for a couple years now. So it's nice that we're finally getting into, the actual information about what all that means and how to relay that information to students and families.
So one question I have for you all, just from our standpoint of all of the webinars we've attended, the trainings that you all have done, do you think it's really simplified? That's a question that I've kind of been going back and forth on. I'm not totally sure yet.
I think for students and families, it is going to be more simplified just because of the amount of questions that they're removing from the FAFSA form. With the revamp, the Department of Education has really made an effort to get most of the information from the tax return. And this year, they're making it mandatory. So on previous FAFSAs, they had the option to retrieve their information from the IRS. This year, it will be mandatory for that information to be imported into the FAFSA form. And I think because of that and them eliminating so many of the questions that they were not able to obtain from the FAFSA, I think it will be more simple for students and families to complete it this year.
I think it will be too. I agree. Just again, because of the number of questions that's being reduced to and the percentage of students, a larger percentage of students and families will be able to retrieve their information from their tax return. I think for students and families, it will be easier. For financial aid offices, I don't think it's going to be easier for them.
I agree with that too. Yes.
I think there's a lot more work put on them because of the simplification, because some of the questions that aren't asked, they have to do additional steps in order to make it work.
Right. I do agree. So how do you think we should be preparing for the FAFSA? So, and we'll start with for those of us who assist students. So we know it's coming. Mm-hmm. It should be simplified for the families, things like that. For the first time filer, how do you think they should be preparing? What can we do to assist the students? And I'm throwing a lot at you all, so you all can kind of take what you want.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to mention, a big piece of this is going to be information for at least for students that are graduating from high school, are going to be their high school counselors. And one of the things that FIA does, and we do this every year, is we have counselor workshops where we will provide information to the counselors about the upcoming changes to the FAFSA. And so for this year's counselor workshops that we are going to be doing all around the state in September and October, we're going to have a pretty big focus on the revamp of the FAFSA. So I think getting that information to the people that are actually in the schools, talking to the students daily, will be an important piece of the outreach and the changes to the FAFSA. So I think that's one big important thing that we're going to be doing.
Yes, I agree with you, and I think we really need to stress that to the counselors that, this is a big change, and I know we've been talking about it over the last several months, but, just really emphasizing about how big of a change this is compared to previous years, and that this is one of the workshops they want to make sure that they're able to attend to learn all this new information.
I agree, and they can visit our website, fia.org, in order to find the specific date that they're looking for that's convenient for them to attend. I think we have 2 that are going to be virtual, 2 or 3 virtual options, and the rest in person throughout Pennsylvania. There are 13 higher education access partners. I know we've talked about that before, but I'll say that again, and we're all going to be conducting these, so it's a great opportunity for the counselors to learn all of the new information and know how to prepare their students. The other part I think is really good is that it is new, it's overwhelming, but they're not alone. We are that resource for them. We're one of many resources for them to be able to tackle, to tap into, especially if their regular school year gets busy. And I don't know what their timeline looks like for December, January, and February, because in the past they were prepared to handle this stuff, the bulk of it in your Octobers and your Novembers. So I think that's good to know.
Another resource I did want to mention, we also have a webinar series that we have available for educators, and this would be for our school counselors, financial aid administrators, our community partners, and one of the webinars we're doing this year will be in November. It'll be on the 24-25 FAFSA overview. So we're going to actually walk through the application, the online application, so that you get a feel of what students will be seeing and what that experience will be for those that are completing the form.
That'll be big. Do we know a date yet?
November 15th.
So November 15th. Okay. And that again is
9 a.m. to 10 a.m.
All right. And I'll ask you to say that again at the very end, just as a wrap up, so that everyone remembers.
One of the things I also wanted to mention is the other resource that Access Partners provide is financial aid nights. So all throughout the state, all throughout the fall, we provide financial aid nights at various high schools and other organizations throughout the state. So definitely students and parents, be on the lookout for that. Make sure you attend those. Those can be highly informative, not only about the FAFSA, but the entire financial aid process and what to expect. So that can be another great resource for students and parents. And then I also wanted to point out for our returning filers, make sure you're in close contact with the financial aid office at your college, because they're going to be an important resource for letting you know the changes to expect and to do when you do your FAFSA as a renewal applicant. So those are definitely people you want to be in contact with as well.
Another resource would be, in addition to the financial aid nights, is we also do FAFSA workshops with students and families at actual high schools and even at post-secondary schools, where we will sit down with students and families at a computer and walk them through the process of completing the FAFSA. So for many students and families, because this might be the first time, or even I have had returning customers who have come back to numerous events just with that help. They just want somebody to tell them that, yes, you're doing it right. So, be on the lookout for those as well. And we will have some of those on our website as well, public events where if you can't attend your high school one, there are other public events that you'll be able to attend.
Definitely.
So here's a question. I am a first-time filer. I'm a student. My parents are nervous about this. I'm nervous about this. I need to complete the 24-25 FAFSA application. What do I need, or what should I be preparing for? And I know for most of us, that FSA ID.
Yes.
Anybody want to talk about what that's going to feel like this year and who needs to actually have an FSA ID?
Sure. We really want students and parents to get their FSA IDs before they sit down to complete the FAFSA. And this is something we're really pushing this year because it's so important. You need to have that FSA ID created. And this is a username and password that you're creating. And you will need that to log into the FAFSA to start the application. You'll also need to have that verified to have your tax information transferred into the FAFSA application. So it's very, very important that students and parents get that before they sit down to complete the application.
And I wanted to point out this year, there's some new terminology there. So student and contributors. So if you are contributing to the FAFSA, not meaning you're contributing to financial aid, not meaning that you're required to pay towards anything, but if your information will be used on that FAFSA application. So if you're the student, a parent who's required to complete it, or the step parent that is married to the custodial parent who's required to complete it, you would be considered a contributor, and each person is going to have their own separate FSA ID account.
Right.
And in the past, we usually just say the student and the parent in one household, and that is it. Contributor is a new word, so if they start to see that language, and you're someone who's completed one in the past, and your step parent didn't have to have that information, have to have one, well, now they may have to have one. So always double check for that.
I think it's important one good way, and this is how I'm kind of thinking about it, basically every individual tax return that is going to be on the FAFSA, that tax return who belongs to that individual, they will need to be a contributor on the FAFSA. So if it's a married couple and they're filing jointly, we still only need one parent.
Right.
But if they're filing separately, both of those parents now will need to have their own FSA ID and be able to consent to have their information uploaded from the IRS. So that's a good way to remember, okay, which parent or how many people, every individual tax return that's being used on that FAFSA, that person has to have an FSA ID to consent to their information being loaded onto the form.
Even if the parent or the contributor did not file a tax return, they still need to consent. So they still need to have an FSA ID. So that's a little bit different too.
Right.
So they'll need to, if we have a married family, dependent students, parents who are married, neither one of them filed a tax return, each one are going to need an FSA ID.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
And the timeline, again, they recommend they complete the FSA ID. Is it 3 to 5 days or?
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Time period?
Yeah.
At least
It's
3
changed.
days.
I know it's changed this year,
They
so I
said 2
can't
to
remember
4.
exactly.
When I was at a training a couple weeks ago, they
2 to
said 2
4.
to 4. But I would say do it at least a couple weeks.
A couple weeks.
Give yourself a
to
couple
be
weeks. And then
super
remember
safe.
your
Yeah,
Yeah, and then
information.
remember it. Yes.
Then
Write it
remember
down.
Write it down. Keep it in a safe space because you will need that information again.
Yes.
In addition to your FSA ID, and then there's just the basic key information that they generally would need to know. List the names of the schools that you're interested in attending. I'm trying to think
and
of
they've
other
increased the number of schools this
That's
year.
right.
You
Yes,
can
up to
actually
20
add
now.
Up to 20.
Yes, instead of 10. So that'd be a nice change for filers.
Yeah, because it's not uncommon for me to talk to the student and I'm going to say, okay, what schools are you interested in? I don't know. I haven't narrowed it down yet. I got about 30.
Like,
okay. So at least if they have 20, they can
Yeah.
get them all on the FAFSA in one setting.
And it's important. They don't have to be accepted to the school or applied to the school. So if there's any schools you're just thinking of, make sure you put them on the FAFSA.
Right.
Anything else about the FAFSA I think that could look a little different that we want to alert the students and families to?
Just the importance of consent. This is something that's new on the application. Even if families complete a paper application, which we really don't want them to do, we want them to do the online application, you still have to consent. And that's giving consent to have the tax information from your tax return transferred into your FAFSA. That's also given consent for the information from your FAFSA to be shared with FIA so that we can determine your state grant eligibility. And then also to have that information shared with the post-secondary schools that you list on the FAFSA. And there'll be multiple opportunities on the FAFSA to indicate that you give consent. And if for some reason you say you don't want to give consent, it will alert the student and say, well, you're not going to be eligible for any financial aid if you don't give consent to have that information shared.
So students, if you're listening, make sure you give consent. For the returning filer, so if someone has already completed the FAFSA in the past, they're coming in as a returning filer. I'm thinking with the exception of maybe there being an additional contributor and making sure they're paying attention to the deadlines, it probably won't feel too different, do you think?
Well, they won't be able to do a renewal application this year because of all of the changes with the FAFSA, with it being completely redone. They won't be able to renew and have information transferred into their FAFSA because some questions are being eliminated and the placing of different questions on the application. So everyone's going to have to start new in completing a FAFSA for 24-25.
And that's why I call you the resident expert, because I'm not sure.
I didn't know that either. I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so that is good to know.
Yeah.
And then I'm assuming going forward,
they'll be able to
do. Okay.
Yes.
And then also for that person, that first time filer who's completing a Pennsylvania state grant application, you still will have the ability to link to it. It'll look a little different. It may feel different or be in a different location, but you will still have the same opportunity to complete your Pennsylvania state grant form after the application. And even if you don't notice it at the very end on your confirmation page, you can still get back to the FAFSA application and then
access the
link
state
to
grant
and
application.
access
Yes,
state
that's a
grant
nice
application.
new
That's a
feature
nice
this year
feature.
too.
They'll be able to log into studentaid.gov, see their my activity page, and complete that link if they miss it.
So specifically regarding resources and tools, and we've talked about a couple of them thus far. What do you think are some of the top ones that they should look at? And we've mentioned FAFSA, the Department of Ed, but it's studentaid.gov that the students and families will go to get a lot of this information, as well as to complete the FAFSA application. That's the one that I recommend that they start looking at, and that's where the FAFSA campaign, outreach campaign is going to kick in September for the students and the families. Anything in addition to Julie, your workshop, again, November 15th,
November
9
15th.
a.m. for educators
Yes.
and those who are assisting students with completing the FAFSA application.
The financial aid nights, the FAFSA completions, and the financial aid toolkit website. Do you know, do students and families, can they access that for the webinars?
Yes.
That's another website.
Federal student aid plans on doing a boot camp for students, parents, those that help students complete the FAFSA application. That's October 25th and 26th. So I'm sure they'll have a lot of information on their social media promoting that boot camp to learn more about this whole new process.
Another thing, our website, Sophia's website, because we do have the webinars and things like that, and your webinar educator series that are on there. If you're on our website, we have a resource page for students and for students as well as for educators. They can go there. They can see little snippets. We're going to be updating some of our videos that we have. And I always tell everyone, if you're tired of seeing our faces, our Access Partners faces, don't click on them. You're going to see them again. But it's a nice way to get a lot of information in little short bursts. That way you don't feel so overwhelmed. We also will have publications that will be available where students can look at, families can look at and read through them. Student Aid Guide is usually one of the most popular that we have. It's a nice, what I call little dictionary or, A through Z little booklet that's going to kind of guide you through the full financial aid process that is out there.
And I know Federal Student Aid plans on doing little short videos too.
That'd be
putting
great.
them in their toolkit and also on their YouTube channel for families to use. So there's going to be a lot of resources available.
And for the families that are overwhelmed, again, I want to explain for those who don't know. You've heard Diona mention financial aid nights, and we talked about the FAFSA workshops. So a financial aid night, because there are 13 higher education access partners, financial aid nights are where we go into schools, communities, some libraries, depending on where you're at, and we kind of explain the full financial aid process. So it's a presentation that allows you all to get the information as well as ask questions directly from you. It's just like a conversation, and then you'll have our contact information. It's usually a PowerPoint that we share the slides and we bring actual publications. Now the workshop what the workshop is, it's a lab-based thing. So that's not to be confused with a FAFSA financial aid night. They're two separate things, and like Julie said, we sit down and walk through the FAFSA application with you. If you're not sure when your high school is doing one, talk to your high school. Most of those dates have been set. If they've not been set yet, they will be shortly. FAFSA completion nights, those that are open to the public, if it's not at your particular high school, we will usually have a listing of those on our website at FIA.org. And of course, there's the podcast. We'll be giving you additional snippets from time to time. Anything that I missed or any key important things from FAFSA that we should be talking about?
Usually we offer statewide webinars too.
Mm-hmm.
So if your high school's not hosting an event, we usually do statewide webinars for the financial aid presentation, and then we also do one for a walkthrough of the FAFSA. So that's another resource.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about this? Are you all nervous to go in?
I was earlier in the year. I feel better about it just from being able to attend a lot of the different webinars the department and NASFA has conducted. I think they were very informative.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's one of those things, the more you hear the information, the more comfortable you are with it.
Mm-hmm.
And like we said earlier, I think for students and parents, it is going to be an easier process.
Mm-hmm.
I think behind the scenes for,
Yeah.
people that have been working with the FAFSA for a number of years,
It's a big
it's a
change.
big change because
Mhm.
we're used to our same terminology. And there's going to be a lot of different terminology changes
Mhm.
and different changes to the formula and things like that. But for students and families that are doing it for the first time, I think it is going to be a welcome change. So.
I'm actually excited.
Oh,
I mean, I've been reading stuff for a couple years now, the actual act, which was this thick, and just watching the webinars and just finally getting some information and just seeing how all of it's going to come together. And I'm excited, like Diona said, I think it will be an easier process for students and families to complete. So I'm excited about that.
I'm hoping it's an easier
Yeah.
process for students and families. I'm excited too
Yeah.
because this is the first revamp,
Oh, yeah.
in how many years?
Mhm.
40.
Yeah, so that's
Right.
huge. So
Yeah.
I think it's exciting for us,
Mhm.
those who've
Mhm.
been doing this for some time. For the students and families, they don't know
Right,
the difference, like you said, but
It's
think
come
we're
a
ready.
long way. I mean, when I did my FAFSA back in the
Paper?
day,
With the
paper
bubbles?
FAFSA,
Paper, yeah.
it wasn't online, and
Yeah.
I just remember, my parents were like, "Why do I have to fill out all this information?" I'm like, "Don't worry, you're not taking out any loans,"
Yeah.
But I mean, just from the point of the big paper FAFSA to it being moved online,
Mhm.
and now to the point where so many of the questions are being eliminated, it really has come a long way.
I agree. So
Yeah.
how many were the max questions?
It was like 106 or something
Yeah,
like
so
that.
106 and
To
down to
49.
like 30 or 49 questions.
Yep.
That is a big change. So I think we are going to be prepared. I think we're
Yeah.
ready.
So too,
So
yeah.
I think the students and the educators who are attending the workshops, if they do, like you said, hit those resources up, really pay attention to the webinars, know where to find your resources, even if you don't know everything, that's okay.
Yep.
I think it's going to be an exciting year.
I think so.
Again, it starts out in December. We don't have that final date yet, but we're all waiting to figure out when the first day is gonna open up. Julie, thanks for joining us
You're
on
welcome.
the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And for
Really
those who
appreciate it.
don't know, did you want to share what regions you cover?
Sure. I'm in the South Central region. I have 6 counties. I have Bedford, Blair, Cambria, Indiana, Huntington, and Somerset County.
All right. So for those who are listening to us, this is Julie. Julie hopefully will join us again on the Higher Education Access Corner. Deanna, any last parting words from you before we wrap
No,
up?
I'm excited. Good luck, everyone that's going to be doing the FAFSA, and just be on the lookout for that announcement date as to when it's available.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
So there you have it. We're done with the Higher Education Access Corner's episode for FAFSA Simplification Revisited. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.